Hey, deserving listeners, Love is Blind. Let's watch and see what comes flying out of my face.
Annie told Nick that he's perfect. I thought it was funny. It was funny because like nobody's perfect, but here she is saying he's perfect. And I was just like, oh, that must be nice as a joke.
It sucks that you tell stories and still don't be accountable in the midst of your damn stories.
All right, so I'll commend the two of them for talking about this. And she chimed in and said, why do I always have to be the one that breaks the ice to talk about a conflict? So according to her, that's her perception. And then he said, well, that's not what happened last night. I went up to you and you told me multiple times, there were two moments that we saw in the edit where he approached her. She walked away, he approached her, she walked away, or no, he walked away. And then he walked to her and she said, I don't want to talk to you. So anyway, but then she says, okay, you tell your story and I'll tell mine. And that's good way to start. He starts to tell his story, and the way he's describing it is pretty accurate. I would say that he did turn to her in a way, it turned to KB and was saying, I wish you did that for me. Now, there's different ways of framing that, right? That he was critical of her, or just like, oh, that'd be nice, or he just wasn't thinking. It kind of looked like he was just in the moment, right? He's that kind of person. He's just like spontaneous, and in the moment, just like, oh my God. But then quickly he was like, oh, what? And then he's like, oh, let's talk about something else. And she just kept at it, which I understand, the basis for that. But anyway, so as he's recalling what happened, his story, she's rolling her eyes. So I don't know what's happening here, but I will tell you, rolling your eyes, unless you're in a scenario where it is like over the top, like, you've divorced someone and they have made allegations that you have sexually abused your kids so that they can get custody of the kids, and you're that far gone and your partner is telling you that you've said lies about them, and you're just like, oh boy, I've told lies about you. You told the police that I sexually abused my kids. I lied. Oh boy. Okay. So, you're, but in a scenario like this, no. If you don't like what you're hearing, use your words. We're not children. So there's that. Also, when you roll your eyes, it's an immediate conversation killer. There's a lot of landmines. There's a lot of opportunities for the conversation like this to go off the rails, for either person or both people to explode or get angry or, stop being constructive, especially at the very beginning. Now she can have an issue. She could wait for him to be done and say, that's not my memory. That, yes, but you also turn to me and criticize me in front of everyone. And, so have use your words. Don't roll your eyes.
I'm gonna tell my story, and I don't want you to interrupt me one time, okay? I was running errands all day, rushing from one appointment to the next. I told you before I left, like, hey, I'm gonna try to stop by the store for us and find us some Western things, right? Called you at 3:30 after my...
Okay, so we're hearing what I guessed, which is that the upsettedness that KB had at the party was not just upset about what had just happened. Although it would make sense she'd be a little bit upset about him in the midst of everyone. Like, oh, it'd be nice if I got that from you. I'm exaggerating a bit, but that's essentially what he was doing. I surmise that this was the buildup, that they came to the party with tension, and that was just like the last straw or something like that. So that's what she's saying, is she's giving us some background. I would imagine that there's unresolved conflict since they met, since they met in person anyway. But she's talking about earlier in the day. Okay.
And all I'm asking for is a little bit of help. Like, I'm just like, babe, can you please? I'm like, what you doing? You're like, I'm just chilling right now. You have nothing to do other than cut your hair. I'm like, well, why can't you just run to the store? You told me, no, I don't want to be late. So I immediately get in my feelings because I don't ask you for anything.
She was, I don't know if I included this, but she said, you will not interrupt me. She was, really stern about it, which is fine, and which is good, actually, because there would be no reason to interrupt in this moment. There's a way to say it. Like, I would appreciate it if you interrupt me because I just want to get this out, and then, you can refute whatever you want. But anyway, so she's saying that she was busy and she was asking for help from him. As a couple therapist, I will hear account, or even an individual therapist, I'll hear an account, and there's always another side of the story that fleshes it out. And I'm always trying to at least establish some ballpark of what actually happened, given both of their stories. Now, some people I have found to be more distorted than others, or there's different distortion levels given their state or given how upset they are, how hurt they are, or whatever. But I'm always, now I'm not saying, now maybe he'll say, yeah, that's exactly what happened or whatever. But I'm guessing that her framing it as you didn't have anything to do is not necessarily true. I'm guessing that she asked him to help. And is there something criticizable there? I'm guessing yes. And that he could have said in the moment, oh, I have a hair appointment, but I'm gonna run right from the hair appointment and I'm gonna get all the things that you want to get for the two of us because I know you've been really busy and I have a little bit more free time so you can depend on me. But that didn't happen. That's just a guess. Is that a high crime? No. But I think the way she's framing it is he's this lazy person who doesn't take care of other people. Now, since the very beginning, I've been wondering if there's a dynamic of mother-son. The more time goes on in the apartment, it looks less and less like that's at least a strong possibility. It looked more like that in the beginning, but it didn't really look like it aside from there were just some vibes that seemed like it could match up that way. You know, even just the details of his life, that he grew up in the foster care system. She is a social worker who works with foster care, and it just kind of feels like, oh, is this kind of like he's one of her clients or something? It's like, that's silly, Anyway, now the vibe from her is that she seems to be coming across like she has to pull more weight, and maybe she did in this moment. So I'll say that there's a possibility that yesterday before the party, that it was yet another moment where she could legitimately say, I want someone that is more adult, more together, more responsible. When I ask them to do something, they have the resources to be able to do it, and they take it upon themselves to do that. It's one of the things I really love about my marriage with my wife, that the two of us are, if I might brag, the two of us are very responsible. When we say we're going to be somewhere, we'll be there, and we'll be 10 minutes early. And if we say, I will bring lasagna or something, you can bet that we will bring a lasagna. If we say, I will be there for you at the airport, we will be there. Not only do we write it down on our calendar, but we remember those things. Now, we call it conscientiousness, and there's other kinds of things. Now, the two of us were raised pretty well, so we don't have any neurodiversity along these lines, so there's no cognitive interrupts, so we have a lot of privilege and things that are making it easier. But I appreciate that about my wife, and I know because she's told me she appreciates it about me. And it can be really annoying when you can't depend on your partner. It can feel, at the very least, like you're alone. It can also feel like they don't care. They're not concerned. They don't wake up in the morning, and at least, because for Stacy and I, a part of our efforts, throughout the day, every day, is like, I wonder how they're doing. And if both people are doing that, then yes, right? Now, there's different levels to this, right? But if it's generally mutual, then it feels good. You got each other's back. This isn't just marriage, it's friends, it's coworkers, it's any relationship. You just feel like I'm a priority. They care about my feelings. In the day-to-day practical life, this is a huge part of feeling loved and feeling appreciated, feeling solid. So there's a possibility that he doesn't really rise to the occasion. We could imagine that Edmond isn't the sort of guy that's just like, okay, she said it, I'm gonna deliver. Now, we don't know that though. We could assume that based on just assumptions of dynamic and his personality, but we don't know. But I'll just allow for that anyway. I'll let her talk.
Me asking you for help, you told me no. I feel like when I'm looking for a husband, I'm looking for someone that wants to make my load lighter.
Okay, so I'm trying to piece together what happened. She, according to her account, said, I asked for help. You said no. And he's not responding, so it kind of makes it look like he's agreeing. But she was very clear, do not interrupt me unless I'm done. So maybe, there's another side of the story. Hopefully we'll hear from him.
Take weight off my shoulders. And in that moment, I called you in distress, and you just made me more stressed out.
I mean, I'm just going to take a guess and say that she didn't call him and say, oh my God, I'm in so much stress. I really need you to do this for us. Can you do me a favor? And he's just like, no. That's the way she's describing it. I'm guessing that isn't what happened, but who knows? We'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Now, could we imagine KB not being explicit or upfront about her distress? That she could have just been asking in a calm voice, maybe not even knowing that she's in distress, or maybe not even knowing that she wants like a man to show up for her, and he wasn't given an opportunity to know that. It's possible. So these are all just, I have no idea about this. Maybe we'll get some data. I'm mainly saying this for y'all's benefit because when you're in a fight, and I know you've been in them, you might be in one right now, or have just had one and you're still in that tension zone or something. Understanding that we are distorted when we are hurt. So when we're hurt and scared, our primary attachment emotions, primary emotions that are reacting to rejection or hurt of rejection, this sort of thing, then everything that we interpret is filtered through those feelings. And if we have a lot of distress, then forget about it. Like we're not seeing reality under that emotional state. So when we're recalling what happened the previous day or the last hour, we have to have wisdom that we are biased. It doesn't mean that our opinion or our memory is wrong. We don't want to self-gaslight ourselves, but we have to have some allowances of like, well, this is the way it felt to me, but maybe it didn't pan out this way. It helps to just be realistic so you can have a realistic conversation with your partner, and it helps to communicate in this way so the other person doesn't have to say, that's wrong, that's not what happened. And it is less triggering to the other person if you frame things in a way that is less condemning and less assuming that the other person is a complete asshole and they just wanted to be an asshole. If you're really trying to improve the relationship, this is a key moment. So I'm pointing all this out for that reason. All of us do it. I do it. All of us, even if we were really practiced and very healthy about following these principles, we would fuck it up most of the time because we're emotional creatures, and that's just going to happen. So perfection is not the goal. It's not possible, but some effort can go a long way. And I'll stop yammering, let him talk. But I'll say for myself, the best and almost singular thing that I will tell myself when I have tension with my wife is I will tell myself, Kirk, you're biased. Tomorrow or next week, you will look back on the thoughts and the impulses you have right now and think you're an idiot. Or you were greatly overreacting, even in your own mind, even if you weren't doing anything. Like the thoughts you were having, the impulses, the conclusions, the story was maybe not wrong, but emphasizing the wrong things, reacting in the wrong way, reacting in a temporary bad mood triggered way that you will not be able to relate to later on. You can't see it right now because it feels like the truth. But you've been through this enough times and you've had enough conversations with clients and you've beat your own head against that wall when it comes to your clients and friends that you are no different and you must be in that mode. You don't know it, but you're in it. It doesn't feel it, and it feels urgent, and I have to get this bullet point across. She's got to understand what she did. She doesn't remember it or something, and I have drilled it into my head. And it is the savior of my life to know that I'm an idiot when I am upset. So when I am not upset, I drill that into my head, go to therapy a lot, read a lot of things, talk to clients, and like, oh, that's me too. I drill it into my head over and over again so that come game time, that thought automatically occurs. You can't tell yourself, oh, I'll think about it in the moment. You won't. It has to be drilled into your skull. It has to be automatic so that it'll push past all the bullshit that you're thinking in the moment. I want to emphasize that it doesn't mean that you tell yourself all of your needs and wants and agency and your rights are bullshit and biased. No. But when you're distressed and when you're upset, your memory, your impulses, I would imagine that y'all can agree that there are times when you're triggered, when you're in the midst of being upset about your partner who you depend so much on for all of, for a lot of your emotional needs. And when something goes a little wonky, it just, it hurts, man. It hurts. And it's frustrating. And you've tried to fix it. You try to communicate and it doesn't go well. They don't understand you. They never listen. Okay. So in that moment, you've had that feeling and you can look back at it and say, I remember thinking that thought, and that's not how I feel now. I thought I needed to divorce you. I thought you were gaslighting me or that you're a narcissist. I'm now thinking no. So same person, two different thoughts. One is anomalous under a flood of distress emotions and traumas emerging. The other one is you normally. So which one is you? So when you're the regular you and you still say, I kind of feel like I need to assert myself in this, or I kind of feel like my partner doesn't recognize this. Okay. In that state, you can depend on it. In that state, you don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're not. And so you got to drill it into your skull. It's not stripping away your agency. It's not saying you're always wrong or you're stupid or you don't deserve your partner. That's what I'm saying. Oh, that makes sense.
Ross is like 7 minutes away. It's a mile away, 7 minutes, there and back, and got his belts and bandanas or whatever the hell I grabbed out of there. And you would have got back in time to do everything you need to do. So when I walk in the house.
So switching gears, Edmond, could nod his head instead of looking like he's shutting everything out. He could say, he's not interrupting, but he could be like, okay, a little bit of give there could maybe soften the blow or bridge the gap or something instead of just like this.
There is no damn, hey babe, I'm stressed out, I'm hungry, I got 30 minutes to get ready. Then you keep coming and asking me questions. I said, Edmond, you hurt my feelings. Do you know what your response was? Instead of being accountable and simply saying, I'll try to do better next time, you told me that your feelings are hurt. The fact that you didn't even acknowledge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm piecing together, I have no idea. But I wouldn't be surprised if we heard his side of the story, which I don't know if we ever will. There's nothing wrong with her saying, I want to get out my whole story without any interruptions. Nothing wrong with that. As long as she reciprocates and lets him do that, I think there's a possibility of that. I'm just going to take a guess and say that it's not that simple. I think that she asked him for help. Either she didn't really fully communicate, or it's because she's mentioning all this stress that she was under. Okay. And I'm guessing either he didn't detect it, which might be understandable, or maybe not, I don't know. And he put some effort into it, but not enough. And then when she got back, it was just this mounting upsetness, maybe even insecurity, because it wouldn't be unusual to be going to an ensemble party and worrying about your outfit or worrying that you're not going to show up with enough cowboy accoutrement, you know what I mean? Because that's what she's talking about. And you get home and you've been not feeling great about the relationship anyway, and then you just explode on him. That's not okay, but we could imagine that might have happened. And then maybe bad mood or something. And then she says, are you going to take accountability? Which that phrase is used a lot. And when I hear couples using that in my office, I will try to steer them away from that, because it's the way that we talk to kids or to citizens. If you're a police officer or something, like you will admit it. And, do we want our partners to acknowledge reality or to not lie or to apologize? Yeah, but accountability, depends on how it's used. Anyway, philosophically, there's nothing wrong with wanting accountability, right? That when we use that word, we're typically, anyway. So I'm guessing that happened. And then when she said, you hurt my feelings, by that point, she had been on a path of criticizing him or distancing or being upset or something. And she even said, I walked in and you said, hey, babe. And I'm like, what? So you can imagine that happening where he either isn't aware or maybe he dropped the ball, kind of, but she walks in the door and he's trying to be nice, which we could imagine. And then she just blasts him, and then she's like, you hurt my feelings. And he's at this point really hurt, and he's like, well, you hurt my feelings. We could imagine that happening. And then she, given her issues or her traumas, or I don't know, she paints that whole picture as you're not taking accountability, when, you know, maybe both people hurt each other, and if they both just took it easy on each other, then there's a path forward to reconciliation. But I don't know. Well, let's see what happens.
My shirt. Oh, you like this? Oh, I cut my hair. Da 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 da. Oh, I want to talk to you about this. You. So yes, I was on edge with you before the event. Cool. We start rolling. We getting towards the event. Cool. We having no problems. We talking in the car. I'm making videos. You know there was no more beef. Boy, I held your arm.
Okay. So then she says, you were asking about your outfit, and it was all about you. If she was communicating that she wanted attention or help or something, and it was reasonable that he received that and didn't deliver, then I guess, but it's hard to understand. But could we imagine, again, I'll get back to the very loose, tentative guess that there is a dynamic of mother-son. It doesn't look that way to me, really. I mean, there's elements of it, but not in the way that I thought we might see. You know, because in the pods and in the getaway, he was very spontaneous. Some people would say immature or youthful or something. It didn't look that way to me. There were a lot of people that were saying that, maybe still, I don't know. I just saw someone who had a lot of emotion and was spontaneous and uncomplicated about his love and his happiness and his joy and his sadness for Brendan being dumped. You know, he's like, oh my God, it just makes me want to cry. It's normal to have emotions. Everyone else can learn from him, actually, in that way. Now, am I saying he's a perfect human being or whatever? I don't know, but I didn't see any negative consequence to him having emotions. And when we're talking about a man with emotions and a black man with emotions, we're like, he's immature, he needs to be stoic, like, right? Okay. So now she wasn't saying that. So that was just the audience. Anyway. But is there some element of that? I don't know.
Try to hold your hand walking into the event. You know, I will not hold your hand or touch you if I'm really upset with you. Now we at the event, right? I'm out there cheating.
Okay. So she's saying that on the way to the event, we were okay. There was no beef. She said that. We were making videos. Everything was fine. There was no beef. On the way into the event, you wanted to hold my hand, and you know that I'm not going to hold your hand if I'm upset. Okay, so which one is it? Now, if there's a legitimate reason why she's upset, fine. I'm guessing it's hurt feelings both ways, you know, because I'm not hearing that he cheated on her or something. I'm hearing that she asked him for help and he was doing something, and maybe he didn't do enough. It's not like he forgot to pick up a kid from school or something, you know what I mean? Like, and they looked like they had a good outfit on when they arrived. Anyway, could she have a legitimate hurt there and concern? Sure. But not holding his hand, you know, and we don't, anyway. So he's trying to hold her hand. She doesn't, it's fine. If she doesn't want to hold his hand, fine. But it sounds like she wasn't no beef. And oof. And the fact that he was in a moment watching Annie going, oh my God, you're perfect, to Nick, and he in a spontaneous expression is like, oh, it would be nice if I had that. And then quickly, oh, you know. So I think we now have the background for that moment. And then we see a continuation of that beef in the party, because that was my guess, was that she's really laying into him. I'm guessing it wasn't just that moment, which it seems like that's true.
Hearing you on, recording you riding a bull, we having a great time. And Annie goes, oh my gosh, you're so perfect, babe, or some shit like that, she says. Mind you.
So at some point, it would make sense if she were to say, okay, I've gotten most of my story out. Do you have a response, or what's your side of the story? You know, there's very different ways to do it. Maybe there's 10 minutes of storytelling and then 10 minutes of him. But the way it looks so far is you're going to shut up and I'm just going to tell a story and deny you the opportunity to defend yourself or chime in. We don't, you know, he might even say he's sorry. She has been, and they have a thing about interrupting. Both of them have said, don't interrupt me, that kind of thing. So And it's not a good sign, honestly. I should mention that if you're at that phase, because everyone interrupts everyone when you're in conflict of this sort of thing. It's not a good thing. It should be curbed, but it's just kind of part of the gig. And if conflict is relatively working out okay, meaning that you don't necessarily resolve the conflict, because most couple conflicts aren't really resolved, you know, but there's enough goodwill or enough making up anyway, then people don't walk away going, she interrupted me again, or I'll be damned if he interrupts me again. They kind of, especially her at this point, has that attitude. So it's a sign that there's resentment and anger that's building up already.
All of us are kind of like right there. And you go, oh, I would love to be talked to like that. And literally, I felt multiple eyes on me, because when I looked up, they looked at me, and then they tried to. Allie's mouth dropped.
Yeah, that's the way. They didn't have the camera on Allie, but I imagine that's what happened. That's not a distortion. That is basically what happened, right? I mean, she's spinning it a little bit, but not really. So then I'm wondering, maybe she didn't spin any of it, because she's not spinning that one.
Due to the comment alone. Then you go, you put your drink down, and you look, and you say, well, you know what, though? You haven't said nothing nice to me all day. More mouth drop.
Well, now she's not lying, but she's telling the story from a particular angle, because she was hostile and laying into him. Maybe understandably, right? She's like, why would you say that? She wasn't yelling at him or anything, but she was digging in and wouldn't let it go. And he kept trying to, oh no, it's fine. He was doing his best to try to smooth it over, right? And basically say, no, I didn't mean it like that. I was just laughing because, he said that thing, and he's, no one's perfect, and da-da-da. And then she pulls him aside and, is laying into him. And then eventually he says what she said. So if you just listen to her side of the story, you're just like, whoa, what kind of person is this? But when we know from what we saw. So then I wonder, okay, if she's spinning it like that, then what else is she spinning? Now, if he tells his side of the story, he's likely spinning too. We all do that.
Everybody is standing right there looking dead at us, and you just sat there and said that in front of everybody, making me look like the bad person when you know I hadn't said anything to you. Then as soon as I'm about to start responding, you go, oh, we don't have to talk about it. I don't want to do this here, babe. I don't want to do this here. So you can say things, but I can't respond. You can say things, but I can't react.
Okay. So I don't know what's happening here. A little tip. People do this in conversation. They will have these, and I sometimes think that people that think that what she just said, I've heard a billion times. Oh, so I can't even talk? I can't even have feelings anymore? So I suspect most people, when they're saying that, don't actually believe that. They're just saying it as an emphasis, right? It's not helpful. It's more constructive if you're trying to actually resolve. If you're just trying to burn the house down, metaphorically, then, go for it. But if you're actually trying to resolve, you're actually trying to be constructive, you're trying to build something instead of tear something down, then you have to be careful about how you word things, and those sort of statements should never be said. It's not like sacrilegious, but it can be debated, right? You don't want to say anything. This is a good rule of thumb. I don't know if I've said this recently in a reaction video. When you're in conflict, everything you say, and sometimes it's hard to do this because, you're back and forth, but generally speaking, if you have one of the few guidelines that you're following, is everything you say should not be debatable. So if we use this as an example, she is saying something that's highly debatable. She is saying, oh, I'm not allowed to have feelings. I'm not allowed to talk. He could say, what's happening right now? People from the outside would say, you're seemingly allowed. You were allowed to talk then. You talked the whole time. So what are you talking about? You were allowed to have feelings. When did he ever say you can't have feelings? And even if he did, but he didn't even say that. So what is that? So it's a heavily debatable statement, and in the midst of conflict, it's kind of an accusation. Maybe it very much is an accusation, and therefore it'll prompt defensiveness, and they will be right to defend themselves, right? Why would you want to do that to yourself? So what's the message? What is she trying to communicate? We don't know, but you've all done this. I've done this. What she's doing right now, some version of it. So you walk it back. You say, what I want to say is I can't have feelings anymore. I'm not allowed to say anything. Okay, well, that's silly, because that's exaggeratory. It's debatable. What is going on there? Well, he wasn't listening to me, and he didn't understand what I was saying. Well, that's still debatable. But it's lesser than it's less severe. It's less unhinged. So let's work our way back. I guess I just want to be heard and understood, and it hurt that I wasn't. But I don't even know. So then, even there's a below there, because even there you could ask yourself, maybe he was listening to me. Maybe he did understand me, but I just didn't feel understood, and that's okay. But I don't know. I think he contributed to me feeling unheard and not seen or not cared about. But there's a possibility that I engineered that, or I was just in a bad mood or something. I don't know. The only thing you can say that is not debatable is how you felt. And it felt hurt. You felt hurt, and you felt frantic, and you felt frustrated. So you start there. There's no debate to that. She felt hurt. She felt frustrated. Okay. Then you say, all right, well, if I go further, if I go up from there, I have to be tentative. I can't say things with certainty because that's debatable. It will create defensiveness. And since I've drilled it into my head when I'm not angry, that everything beyond this feeling, every conclusion I make, every memory I have around this fight is likely at least distorted and, spun in my memory. So what can I say? Well, I can say, if I'm KB, I felt hurt and I felt frustrated. I felt alone. I felt like I couldn't depend on you. But I don't know if that's because of what you did, or if it was because of the way I was seeing things, or because of my bad mood, or I came in hot when I got home and that set in motion a bunch of things that resulted in you pulling away from me. And, but all I know is in that moment I felt hurt, humiliated, and I was really frustrated. Okay, when you do that, other people, the people who love you, will have less likelihood of feeling attacked and therefore less need to defend. And all of their love for you will be pure and readily available to you. They can say, oh, because they're not being accused. They're not being blamed. And maybe they are to blame. And if you lay it out like that, like I was hurt, I was frustrated, clearly, I don't know if that's your fault. It could be I was in a bad mood. I could have been a jerk face to you earlier, and that's why you did. I don't know. I have an impulse to say that you were all wrong, but I'm pretty sure that can't be the case. And so I don't know, but I do know that's how I felt. And I guess I'm just looking for some empathy around that or something. I think he's capable, without all of this other stuff, to be able to say, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, I know you're stressed out. Maybe I did drop the ball, and maybe I did turn, and I'm sorry. So you want to lay it out so that there's no complication for empathy. This is my bread and butter with couples. If you feel like your partner isn't being empathetic or isn't caring or isn't considerate, it's probably because you're either not signaling to them, and or every time you ask for empathy or care, you're yelling at them. You're criticizing them. You never listen to me. Instead of, I don't feel heard. I'm sad. And I don't even know if it's your fault. If you say that to someone that loves you and you haven't had a history of yelling, because, if you've had 10 years of yelling, whenever you bring up the topic of being heard and you're yelling at them, even if you bring it up in a functional way, and this will happen, this is why it takes a while to adjust. But if you then change the script and say what I'm suggesting, they could just hear what they usually hear and know that a hostile attack is happening on some level or will happen, and then they just start to defend themselves. So it's not magically going to work right away if there's a history of that. But particularly if you're in couple therapy and both of these things are working, then you don't have to wrest empathy out of someone. And if you've never had someone that had unconditional love for you, then you don't think it's possible. So you feel like you have to yell to get it. But your spouse loves you, and you love your spouse, and you love your people, and they love you. We are, we evolved in all likelihood to love each other. It's as natural as getting thirsty or wanting to open our eyes and see the world. We have a need to express empathy and receive it. You don't have to convince someone. It'll happen naturally. The way that people that seem like they'd be bad parents, as soon as they have a kid, parenting happens naturally for most people. The love, the attention, the obsession with this creature that smells good. It's like, oh my God, previously I didn't like babies, but now I love at least this baby. It's an instinct. We have an instinct to care and love and empathize. It's there. You don't have to wrest it. You don't have to pull it out of people. What you have to do is not push it back inside of them. What you have to do is not put them in a state where only they're thinking about, how do I defend myself? What you have to do is just express your hurt and your fear, and their empathy will happen. And cry. You'll hear me say that. That's the royal road to someone's empathy. If you're not being hostile, if you're not attacking them, if you're not saying things like, oh, what, so I can't ever talk? Underneath that, for KB, in all likelihood, is I don't feel heard. I don't feel taken care of. But because of trauma, because of culture, because of our life, culture meaning American mainstream culture of denying vulnerability and not having examples anywhere in reality TV or otherwise of people having these, they do. And I could argue Megan and Jordan have conversations in this healthy direction, but I get it. But it ruins our lives. It ruins our marriages. It ruins our health. It ruins everything. And if we just can and maybe in the beginning there's if I just say I'm sad, I don't know if they're going to care. That's vulnerable. That's a leap, it's hard. So baby steps, but each person doing it with a therapist there to help. All right. Well, that does it for that episode of Psychology in Seattle. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.